Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm sharing my recipe for making soft whole wheat sandwich bread, including how to mill wheat berries to make the fresh whole wheat flour used to make this bread. For health reasons, I started reducing the amount of processed foods and added chemicals that my family and myself consume. One of the top highly processed food items we consume in our household is bread, so I learned how to make it myself. I found so many easy and amazing recipes for wholesome and delicious bread with higher nutrition that I don't buy bread from the grocery store anymore. I'm hoping my recipes will help change the idea that making bread is difficult or time-consuming by sharing shortcuts and hacks that make it easier even for those with busy schedules. Let's start with milling the flour. If you don't have the time or equipment to mill fresh flour, the next best thing is to use organic, non-genetically modified whole wheat flour from the grocery store. Costco sells a Kirkland brand organic flour that I really love. If you go this route, just skip to the part where we start making the bread. To mill flour, you will need some sort of a grain mill. Since I already have a KitchenAid mixer, it was very easy and inexpensive compared to the other options for me to just buy a grain mill attachment. I'll link in the description to the one I use. I was surprised by how heavy duty this thing is. It's all metal and very heavy. I have experimented with grinding whole wheat berries in a Vitamix blender or a coffee bean grinder and got okay results. The flour was not as fine, so I had to sift the larger particles out. It still baked decent bread. The flour texture from using this official grain mill was a million times better and softer. The softer and more fine your whole wheat flour is, the softer the resulting bread. Softness is important to me because if it's hard or gritty, my son won't eat it. Just like most kids, he is a picky eater. He loves the softness and texture of the whole wheat bread I make when I mill the flour with this metal grain mill. Set up your choice of grain mill and pour in the wheat berries. I only grind enough berries to make enough flour to use in this recipe to keep it fresh. I adjust the coarseness setting to fine for bread flour. I take it a step further and grind my own flour for many reasons. For one, whole wheat berries contain the bran, germ, and endosperm, giving you all the nutrients that are often stripped from store-bought flours. This includes fiber, essential fatty acids, and vitamins like B6 and E. Also, I can buy organic heirloom wheat berries to ensure I'm not using flour made from genetically modified or GMO strains of wheat, which is lower in nutrients, usually sprayed with tons of chemicals like glyphosates, and causes a lot of allergies, specifically gluten allergies. In fact, many people who have a gluten allergy report they don't have any allergies when they eat products made from non-GMO wheat. Look at how fine the flour is just after one pass. I like to run the flour back through the grain mill 2 or 3 times to make sure it is super fine. You will notice some brown papery bits. That's the bran. I find that the bran gets softer and softer each time that I run the flour through. It basically disintegrates when you bake the bread, so no worries, you will not notice it. It is estimated that in just 3 days after being freshly milled, flour loses up to 95% of its nutritional content. It just degrades. So that flour you're buying from the grocery store that was milled who knows how many days ago is basically dead and devoid of nutrition. It's a bunch of empty calories. This whole process took less than 10 minutes. If you grind more than needed, store the leftover flour in an airtight container in the fridge or freezer to preserve its nutrients and freshness. And that's it. Now we're ready to start making bread. You can find the exact ingredient quantities and directions for this bread in the description below. First, we mix the sponge portion of this bread recipe in a bowl. Later, we will add the rest of the ingredients. Cover the top of the sponge mixture with a damp kitchen towel and set it aside for the first rise. This step helps to hydrate and soften up the wheat flour. I set my oven to warm for about 10 minutes and then turn it off. I put a dish full of water at the bottom to create humidity. This creates a warm environment to help my bread doughs rise very well. I put the sponge inside the gently warmed oven to rise until it's double in size. This took around 2 hours. Once done, it's time to add all of the rest of the dough ingredients. I know it's a little unusual to add lemon juice, but trust me, this recipe works. A little bit of Vital wheat gluten makes the bread texture more soft. If you don't have wheat gluten, just substitute some more whole wheat flour, but just know the texture won't be as soft. Mix everything together until a dough ball forms. If the dough is still sticky and clings to the sides of the bowl, add tiny amounts of flour until it does not cling anymore. Next, knead the dough for 10 minutes. I'm using my KitchenAid dough hook to knead, but you can use the knead setting of your bread maker or just knead by hand. After 10 minutes, I dump the dough onto my kitchen counter. It should roll easily across the surface without sticking. If it sticks, add tiny amounts of flour, fully incorporating it in until it does not stick to the counter anymore. That is how you know that it's done. Put the dough in an oiled bowl and cover with a damp kitchen towel. The dough will now rise for a second time. I place it in my warm and humid oven to rise until doubled in size. This took almost 2 hours. Once done, dump the dough onto the kitchen counter. Use a rolling pin to roll the dough into a long rectangle piece that is just as wide as as the length of the baking pan. I'm using a 8-inch long Pullman loaf pan, which is perfect for sandwich bread sizes. So the width of my roll is around 8 inches, and I just roll it out very long. I would say the thickness is probably a 1/4 inch. Then tightly roll the dough, kind of like when you make cinnamon buns, except we're not going to cut it into buns. Pinch the sides of the roll downwards to seal, and then tuck it under the roll. Place the roll into your oiled baking dish. I like the crust of my bread to be very soft, so there are a few things that I do to make it so. For one, I keep the dish of water at the bottom of the oven so there's humidity to soften up the bread while it bakes. Secondly, I wash the surface of the bread with an egg wash. This keeps the surface moist so it does not dry out and get hard. I apply the egg wash now before my final shaped bread's last rise, and again right before baking. And lastly, I cover the bread as it bakes with an aluminum foil tent so it doesn't get hard and dark while baking. After applying the first egg wash, put the bread back into the warm and humid oven for its third and final rise. It is done rising when the top of the bread is about 1 inch above the top of the Pullman loaf pan. Once risen, carefully take it out of the oven. Set the bread on your kitchen counter while setting the oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. When the oven reaches temperature, it's time to bake. Apply one more coat of egg wash, being gentle so you don't deflate the dough. Then sprinkle your toppings. This is optional, but I really like using rolled oats. And then bake the bread for 40 minutes. After 40 minutes, remove the aluminum foil tent and bake for another 5 minutes. Remove from the oven, put a dry dish towel over the top of it so all the moisture doesn't escape, and let it cool down for at least 5 minutes before attempting to loosen it out of the pan. The crust should be golden and soft and the bread nice and springy. Use a bread knife when slicing. By milling your own wheat and baking your own bread, you're taking a huge step toward healthier eating. This sandwich bread made with freshly milled flour is soft, nutritious, and absolutely delicious. Perfect for toast, sandwiches, or just enjoying with a pat of butter. This bread has more protein and fiber than regular grocery store bread, so it will keep you full for much longer and doesn't spike your blood sugar levels as much. If you found this tutorial helpful, please give it a big thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and share it with your friends. Let me know in the comments if you tried this recipe. I'd love to hear how it turned out for you. Happy baking, and I'll see you in the next video.